Joe, tell us a little bit about you and your business.
Yeah, so I'm the CEO of Access Mobility 24. We've been around for 10 years. We build custom mobile apps for lots of different companies, a lot of sales enablement apps that you can imagine going face-to-face, belly-to-belly selling through an iPad is taking a dent. But we also launched a product which is doing incredibly well. It's called our Video Marketing Center, and that is really where I'm spending a lot of my time right now. That product is, very appropriate for this kind of a call because you can't go see people. Manufacturers are able to load their videos with their collateral and be able to click on a few buttons and then add a distributor logo and then email out one link to their buyers, and we track all the data and stuff. So it's really solid. I'll post a link. You guys can look at it later, but it is a challenge. And the bigger challenge that I'm seeing is when you're at least prospecting, right? Is LinkedIn is inundated, email is inundated. To break through that clutter is damn near impossible. And the one trick I can tell you that's been kind of working for me is in the subject line, be creative and make sure you work their title into the subject line. And I've been having a lot more success with that, because then they feel like you've really, it's personalized to them.
That's really smart.
I might have a little luck with that, but anyway, so we build stuff, and now I'm praying people buy my software as a service. So
very good. We're honored to have you today, Joe. Thanks for joining us. And you're in a great business. And speaking of great businesses that are very timely, Stephanie, how are you today?
Hello there. I am good and very busy in our industry for sure. I'm the vice president of business development and obviously sales at J2 Medical Supply. We are a PPE manufacturer and provider based out of Valencia, California, although I personally am from the great state of New York. But love Southern California and actually hope to use this opportunity to relocate out there. Huntington Beach is one of my favorites. Our organization has been in virtual sales since we started. Essentially, the company is about 16 months old. However, we've scaled so quickly, we've become the nation's largest diverse supplier of the products that we provide. My background is in startups, specifically in marketing and technology. So virtual sales is not something that's new to me. It's something I was doing long before anyone was forced to do it. So something that I feel very comfortable with. And we use a lot of those techniques within our own organization. And they've proven to be very successful based on, our growth over the last 16 months. So I'm excited to hear from you and learn more about all of you and hope I can be a resource.
And I'm going to pick on you a little bit, Stephanie, do you have your camera off because of all those stacks of money they're piled up?
So this is the woman, I'm the only woman on the call. So here's the woman's challenge, right? Is when business gets really busy, we don't always have time to do our hair and makeup every day,
Yeah, I don't either.
Joe did his.
Throw on a shirt and go on the call. We have work to do.
Yeah, I didn't do mine either. I feel you.
That's great. Well, thanks, Stephanie, and welcome. How about you, Michael?
Yeah, hi everybody. I've sort of mastered the wetting your hair in the sink in 5 minutes and getting in front of Zoom. Stephanie, happy to take it offline and share some techniques. So I'm Mike Johnson, SVP of Sales, overseeing North America and Asia Pacific for a company called Smart Recruiters. So we sell recruiting software to large enterprises. So everybody from IKEA and Domino's to Visa, et cetera, a bunch of big brands that you're all aware of. We are just closed our Series E round. So we were started in 2011. So we crossed, if you're familiar in the world of tech, right? It's all about the unicorn status, over $1 billion valuation. So we
Yeah,
just got
nice.
the $1.5 billion valuation, $110 million in cash. So my challenges right now are about growth and scale, because I've got to grow our sales organization by 3x over the next 18 months.
Great.
I think similar to Stephanie, right, in tech sales, we've always been doing a lot of, Zoom product demos. We always love to get on site. I think, the challenge that we have is oftentimes in those evaluations, there's lots of people on the Zoom, and just trying to keep people engaged is tough, right? I mean, it's easy to multitask, those kinds of things. So thinking about more creative ways to do that. Zoom obviously has some tools around, creating polls, annotating the screen, sort of subtle things like that, just to create a little bit more kind of interactivity. It's easy to read the room when you're on site. That kind of goes out the window.
Real quick, Mike, I'm going to add
Yeah.
something. I talked to a company the other day. I've gotten to know the CEO a little bit.
Mhm.
I think it's called Riff AI or Riff Analytics AI. Anyway, they have a Zoom product,
Mhm.
and you click on a box, and it shows, like, if we were on this call, it would have, all 7 of us around a ball circle,
Yeah.
and it starts to float based on who's dominating the conversation, and it tracks the percentage of everybody who talks.
Yeah.
And then you can print a transcript out after the meeting.
Yeah.
And you can see who's giving positive responses versus negative responses versus no response.
Yeah.
The question is,
It's
what do you do with
pretty
that?
killer.
Yeah.
I mean, it
Right.
brings accountability and keeps the team
Yeah.
focused. And
Yeah, there's some Stanford engineers that I've connected with that have a project going called Sylvia.ai, which analyzes actually the video on the screen, and then you can kind of get a sense of, it gives you a whole report showing you every attendee, what their engagement was. Of course, you got to have the video on, and now we're finding fewer and fewer people are even sometimes turning on the video. And we've had to make the video thing optional as well, even just internally, for the reasons that Stephanie mentioned. So trying to find, just some things around that. And then, like everybody else, right, prospecting is, not going to any events anymore, no live events, right? I mean, a lot of the pipe came from industry events and conferences and, connecting with people. And so that's been a big struggle for us, right? It's just, to the point, I think somebody mentioned something about LinkedIn and email, right? I mean, it's just incredibly noisy, and trying to figure out good ways to cut through that. So.
Well, unfortunately, I was able to cut through the noise and find this fine group to get everybody together today through LinkedIn. So thanks for joining us, Michael. And I've got a couple ideas that I may offer to you a little bit later that I found are very beneficial on the Zoom calls around that engagement issue. So I'll try to drop those on you. And then Brian, bring us up to date on you and what you're doing.
Perfect. So thanks for inviting me. Really appreciate it. Great feedback and great thoughts from all of you, kind of facing different set of problems and trying to figure out solutions. Is really awesome. Thanks for bringing us all up together, Juan. Brian Satyanathan. I'm a serial entrepreneur. This is my 3rd startup. It's called iterate.ai. Located here in Silicon Valley. We are Silicon Valley and a Denver company, because one of my co-founders in Denver, so part of the company is in Denver. The others in Silicon Valley. We're about 8 years old, and I place out of the chief digital officer, chief strategy officer, and a little bit of technology role as well. So kind of wearing many hats, and I'm responsible for P&L and sales as well. So founders are still selling. We just gave our first offer to our first vice president of sales, who's going to be joining us next month, right? But we've crossed 8 figures revenue, right? The company is sort of fully bootstrapped. We have a little bit of angel and corporate investments, not dependent on the VCs. We are pretty much building it as a company that is all revenue driven, right? Eat what you kill kind of a model, right? We are about 65 people right now. During COVID, we doubled went from 30 to 65 because we're in the digital innovation space. What the company does is we provide a low-code platform that already had pre-built modules for building applications, and we sell this entire suite to large enterprises, right? As you know, large enterprises kind of tackling the big wave of digital. How do we get consumer solutions out in front of the consumers? At the same time, it talks back to our legacy enterprise systems, right? There's a lot of startups in Y Combinator, whatever, right? All these kids, they build great software, but they don't talk back to the enterprise. So all these things live in a silo, but we have a lot of deep enterprise experience. So we built a platform that's pre-integrated with existing enterprise systems. So you can easily roll out mega consumer solutions like, license plate, pay by plate, or you could roll out solutions that does AI-based people counting. You could do like things like, some of the folks are using in the medical industry for X-ray classification. Lots of different problems, all solved by the 5 forces of innovation: AI, IoT, blockchain, and data, right? My background, 8 years at Apple, then started a video streaming company, sold it to a company in Orange County. So I used to come, in your direction a while back every week. And then I spent time doing venture capital for a year, invested corporate VC work, and then started and did another company in between, and then did this company. So my essential problems in sales is right now, we're trying to scale sales it to a level where we can get pretty good inbound leads that are very qualified. So predominantly the last 2 years, we've been getting a lot of our sales referrals through advisors of the company. We have an executive advisory board who actually connect us, who are actually ex-retailers, senior leaders, who actually connect us to board levels within other organizations. So they're all very warm introductions, and that's how it's been growing, right? One of the things I've realized is I've been looking at this company called C3.ai. You guys probably heard of them, right? It's Tom Siebel's company, right? So the way C3.ai grew was when they went public in 2019, December, right, pre-COVID, they were $145 million revenue, valued at $11 billion, 78x valuation, but then they only had 14 customers. I spoke to the VCs who were involved in this, so like about 14 to 15 customers. Their largest was $36 million deal, and then the smallest probably in the 7 to 8, right? Because a lot of our deal sizes are big. So for our growth pattern, I mean, we don't necessarily want to, follow a SaaS immediately. At some point, we would do much more self-service and SaaS. But now I think what we're really thinking about is how do we replicate a similar model within our company? How do we do elephant hunting and then just like get to escape velocity just through like traditional old school enterprise sales? So that's what we are thinking about, and love to pick the brain from this, all your ideas. Yeah, thank you.
Beautiful. Thank you for sharing all that. And you guys, I'm sure all looked at my LinkedIn profile, know what I do, but I'll give you a quick synopsis. I work with companies of various sizes. I've got about 45 companies I'm working with right now. Through my years, I've got 40 plus years of running large and small businesses at the executive level. I found through the years that most companies are frustrated with their sales teams. They're frustrated with the execution, the output, the behaviors, et cetera, of their sales teams. But when I track back where the root cause of that frustration, it really most often comes from the sales manager. And as I've dug into that through the years, I found that these sales managers are not properly equipped with the knowledge, tools, and materials to go out and be as effective as they could be. They don't know what they don't know. My role with companies is to fill in that gap. I've got a very robust training and coaching program to bring these sales managers up to high-level results-driven individuals. Now, as I built this business, and I built this training over a number of years, as I built it, I also was asked multiple times, hey, well, do you do sales training? Do you deal with sales training? Well, I've developed sales training programs for other companies, one of which my previous employer. And so I've added that as an add-on if somebody wanted me to get involved with their sales team for training solutions as well. So that's what I do. All of my work is virtual. I launched it virtual. I've kept it virtual and love every minute of it. But I've found very often, as we're talking today, that there is a lot of companies out there that are struggling with the vital behaviors and the best practices of making virtual selling and interactions as beneficial as they can be. So, Michael, I'm interested. I said I'm going to drop a tip on you when you're doing a virtual training or a virtual presentation to a corporation, to that team. How many people do you normally have on a virtual call?
Yeah, I mean, that can range from 4 or 5 up to 30 or 40.
Wow, so you get some big groups. How often are you getting 30 or 40 in there?
It's probably, I mean, we do a number of, throughout our process presentations, different audience, because we're selling to finance, we're selling to IT, we're selling to HR, et cetera. So, usually at some point in the sales process, one of those large meetings is going to happen.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. There's just a lot of evaluators essentially.
Very good. And what have you come across anything that you know works that you've added to your skill sets of your presenters?
Yeah, we have. So we did a training session on annotation. So typically in these meetings, right, the sales rep, the executive sponsor on our side, sometimes that's me, sometimes that's a regional vice president. They're going to go through a little bit of a deck and a framing exercise, et cetera. And then we also are supported by solution architects, solution consultants, what we call solution consultants, sales engineers, essentially, right, that kind of run the product demos. So yeah, that was one thing, right? It's just a training on like how to use the annotation tools that are in Zoom, so that we're not sort of flying around the screen and things or on decks. You can be circling stuff and keeping people sort of engaged that way. So I think that's been helpful. We've introduced polls as a way to create interactivity and engage the audience in our presentations, right? The other thing that we've done is, especially in those larger audiences, like it's just not effective to have everybody sort of chiming in and interrupting. Hey, I've got a question. So we'll use the chat in Zoom and encourage people to just, as we're going, so somebody else is monitoring the chat and answering questions. It's actually really nice because you can get a transcript of that chat. So, you're not having to write down the questions, what are the answers, et cetera. So you can just go back, print that out if there's things that we need to follow up with, who those people are, right? So there's some persona mapping there that also then allows us to, as in any deal, you're trying not to get single threaded, right? So it allows us to, tell the sales engineer, you take these, connect directly with those folks. This person was an executive, I'll take that one directly as a follow-up, et cetera. So the chat's been something that we've done that's been effective. And honestly, we also have tried to just encourage the buyer to keep, like, let's not go into a 3-hour, 4-hour, right? Where it's like, now we got to cover off on all these different people. Let's break that out now and say, hey, if it's just a conversation with IT, how are we going to integrate into the enterprise stack, et cetera, et cetera. Talk about compliance, talk about its security, et cetera, those kinds of things. Like, let's carve that out as its own separate meeting. If you got somebody who's really just focused on data and analytics, let's just carve that out as its own separate meeting. So encouraging like the buyer, like, hey, let's break these things out into smaller meetings, right? Where we've got smaller groups and so, that's helped because, again, typically, if you're on site, right, that might be 4 hours, but, there's an agenda for a group. They come in, they leave, the next group comes in, they've got their topics. And so, trying to sort of run things like that. I think those are wrote down some other things. Yeah.
Well, those are key approaches, and if you guys want, I'll send you my ebook on virtual selling. I wrote last year, and it may have some tips in there that you all may be able to pick up on. But one of the best tips, Michael, that I've seen work both personally and in the with the folks that I've trained to do this is called the 3x30 rule. Are you familiar with the 3x30 rule? Every 3 minutes, I've got to stop talking, and for 30 seconds, engage somebody in the audience. Ask them a question, ask for feedback. And if I've just got that routine down, that every 3 minutes, I got to shut up, because what kills engagement is a monologue. And you've got to turn virtual presentations into a dialogue. That creates the proper engagement that you're looking for, and that 3x30 rule works really well. So just a selling tip. Yeah.
The other thing I was going to say we've done is in partnership with our pre-sales organization is create a lot more video vignettes, right? Product vignettes and video as means to follow up, and just make sure that based on kind of who they are persona wise, here's some follow-up little snippets you can kind of watch on your own.
Excellent.
That way, if they missed things or whatever, because I always say that buying software is a little bit like buying a house, right? You're looking at 4 or 5 different vendors, and after you've gone through all of them, you can't remember which house had the bathroom that you liked and which one had the kitchen, etc. Right? So it's like we're constantly trying. Yeah, exactly. So we're just trying to constantly reinforce, what we showed them, right?
Good job,
Michael. What was the name of the software that you guys sell again?
It's called Smart Recruiters.
Smart Recruiters. Okay.
Yeah.
And so, Royal, tell me what you and your team have picked up on in the way of some best practice of vital behaviors of virtual selling.
So we've got a team of about 12 people that drive sales, business development that I have. And I think, it's a tool, right? It's a way to connect with people. And I think what it did is over the past couple of years, it showed the weakness in our approach to selling. It's a lot more apparent when you're in this environment. So I think the 3x30 that you talked about, we do a lot of prep, and we do upfront contracts when we get on the call, where we will first ask a lot of questions about what they're looking for. We already know what we want, and so we'll be prepared on that. So we suspend all that and first inquire, and we lead them to where we want to land if we can. So, I understand we're here to do this. Is this what you want to do? Is there anything else? Great. But at the end of this, how much time do we have at the end of this? If, we provide this information, are we prepared to go to X, whatever it is we're looking for? If it's prospecting, if it's technical sales, if it's information gathering. Definitely if we have more than one person on, we'll even assign someone to interrupt, to disrupt the call.
Smart.
Because it is easy to sit back and say, hey, 3 minutes, stop yourself. You get going and you're passionate. It's hard to do. So we intentionally have other people come in and ask a question or stop or redirect. And we have a lot of different format meetings. We did the first ever virtual audit by a major pharma company. First one they ever did. They're like a $52 billion company, and they're like, it wouldn't work, but they couldn't come and they needed the product. And so we actually spent a lot of time creating a virtual audit of our company for them. And we sat and everybody presented their area as though they were there. And so that was a very different forward feeding, excruciating day. So that's on one end of the spectrum. And then we've done technical presentations to up to like 55, 60 people around the globe at one time, to multiple time zones. those, it's really hard. And I was listening closely to how do you gauge engagement? For us, the way we gauge is the follow-up. What comes out of those as a result. So in terms of our primary use, the other thing I'm kind of a student of communication when we're prepping for something. So I like to begin with the end in mind and not have people trying to guess where we're going. And so sales people are storytellers, and they like to build up to something. It's a natural thing with not all salespeople, but many. So we've had to turn that thing around and be more deductive, let them know what we're going to do today. And then if people, you can capture them at that point if this is something that they really want. If not, you give them the opportunity to redirect the conversation up front. It sucks to get to the end of the meeting and nothing but crickets because you missed it. And it really wasn't what people wanted to talk about that day.
Mm-hmm.
The other part about the upfront contract is if you clearly explain, what you're hoping to accomplish on the call and confirm with everybody the time they have, they lock themselves into the time up front. Without doing that, I've been on calls with, oh, you know what, I've got to catch another. They're done. They're out. So, we're still learning. We traveled a lot. We did a lot of face-to-face, huge travel budget in this company until COVID hit in February 2020. And then it stopped, and now it's picking up again. But I don't think we'll ever go back to the level of travel that we had at one time because of this tool and just the change in behavior.
Yeah.
The behavioral change is what it is.
Yeah, it's huge. And I agree with you. I don't know that it'll ever be back to the levels it was 3 years ago. So
another little trick we tell them is clear your desktop if you're going to be sharing stuff. I've been guilty of having the wrong information up there in front of a customer, like cost data.
yeah.
You think you're on one screen, all of a sudden it flipped. Or you flipped it to the wrong screen. So housekeeping stuff, very basic, but it could make or break the whole conversation if you're showing the wrong information on your screen.
You got to have a preparation checklist. Absolutely. It's like you only get so many opportunities to present to folks, and you better treat it like you're getting ready to take off a jet airliner and go through the checklist, right?
Yeah. And then having to keep up with the different formats, right? Teams, Zoom, whatever, they have different nuances.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I don't know if that was helpful feedback or not, but that's kind of where we are with.
Well, I like your upfront contract. Does that appear as almost like an agenda? This is what we're going to get done, and this is how we're going to get it done, or is it really
not always?
This is what we're going to get done.
Usually, they'll have either they have it here or they'll have it in writing. Generally, I like my team to have it in writing for themselves, but it rarely shows up on the agenda.
Okay. And
it's more of a natural, just kind of walking. Hey, just want to frame the day, frame the meeting. Hey, just confirming we're here to do this. There's the agenda. That's what we're going to talk about. Yep. Okay, good. At the end of this, here's our call to action or our takeaway. So I'm not, when I talk to my team, I'm not the guy that's going to ask, how did the meeting go? Because that could take you in so many directions. I just ask them how the meeting ended. I want to know what they got out of that meeting.
Yeah.
We have
Good.
I think not traveling has allowed our sales managers, myself included, to be on a lot more meetings. So that's been sort of a benefit because you're not on the road.
Yeah.
But with that, there's a lot more information sort of flying at you.
Yep.
So Raul, one of the frameworks that I put into place for call prep, which I stole from Larry Ellison, which is the AAA framework as a call prep, which is answers, attitudes, and actions. So what answers do we need to get? What attitudes do we need to change? And then what actions do we need to commit to?
Yep.
And that's something that then they can share with everybody ahead of the meeting, kind of who's doing what. And it's been really effective, actually.
Good tip. Good tip. Thanks for that, Raul. And Stephanie, since you're a master at this, I'm really interested in hearing your input. What are some of the things that you and your team are utilizing for virtual meetings that are effective?
So, I mean, Zoom is far and away our top choice. We've had a lot of technical difficulties with Teams, and I can't believe some people are still using WebEx, but that one is absolutely brutal. It like shuts down people's computers and resets settings on mics. And I'm just like, oh my goodness. Okay, no more WebEx, guys, no more. We have better tools now, you know. So we certainly leverage Zoom for our meetings. Definitely, you know, the whole you need to be on camera for those calls is really my experience, even if they're not. So we really encourage our team to do that, even if they can see you. A lot of my background is in like sales psychology. As far as education goes. So there's just so many human components to actually being able to see someone from a neuro basis, right? That really impacts our decision making. So we certainly encourage that. We really try to stay ahead of the call by sending materials first so they have a chance to review, right? And we can talk about their feedback or their findings on those calls instead of, we had reps that were just kind of, scheduling calls, but it was really elongating the sales process because of the lack of the information that they had to consider first. So we've kind of devised a strategy where on the front end, in our industry, it's not anywhere near as easy as other industries I've been in for sales. Because when it comes to healthcare, there's just a tremendous amount of red tape for absolutely appropriate reasons. I get it. But it's not, when I was just doing B2B sales, I was a 2-call close girl. That was that was my process. First call, we're doing a discovery. Second call, we're doing a proposal, and that was how I moved. Well, in this industry, it just does not work that way in healthcare. You might have 10 meetings before you close, because there's contracts in place, because there's regulations in place, because there's so many outside contributing factors, so I've enjoyed this opportunity, even though I never had any intention of getting into the healthcare world for these reasons. It's really forced me to grow a lot and just really get a lot more buttoned up, proactive. I think the other thing I've noticed about it being completely virtual, because a lot of times I did virtual calls, but then I'd meet for lunch, I'd go to a mixer, whatever. And working the room is certainly more my strength. But what I've noticed is, when it's completely virtual and there's really no opportunity for that, in-person experience, it does make the sales cycle a little bit longer. It doesn't quite go as fast as I believe it would, in different settings. So making sure that you have a pipeline that's built to support that, knowing that it's going to be a longer sales process, that's really something that we've honed in on. Using some of the old school rules like 5 times pending, which I think is a great rule of thumb, right? Whatever you want to close this month, you better have 5 times that amount in your pipeline. We leverage a lot of different technology tools because I am a millennial and I love them. So we use a lot of different prospecting tools like Dun & Bradstreet. There's a wonderful tool called Wizza that connects with LinkedIn Sales Navigator and can help create prospecting lists. One of the other things I really noticed, because, I'm a communications psychology person, is messaging templates. I'm not a big fan of, scripting your conversation. However, one of the things that I found when I was, listening to our reps talk to people, or reading even the emails that they had sent to people, and this was something I think I overlooked for a long time, was a lot of their communications were just, they're just poor communications. They're just really not effective. And when you are limited to only phone or only Zoom or only an email, it's critically important that your communications are very effective. So a lot of times I personally write all of our email templates, and our reps can use them and customize them, but they're using language that I have given them, because that was something I really took for granted that they could all kind of communicate on that level. And the other major thing that I have noticed, and I know I'm the only woman on this call, so please don't get mad at me when I say that.
About it.
But the other thing I noticed, we have a very male dominated staff. And one of the things I've had to work with them on is active listening. Where women, we're kind of conditioned to do that from a young age, right? To pick up on cues and things like that, to be more maternal or more of a caretaker. A lot, particularly of the males on our team, were not engaging in active listening. And I was watching them say things that were completely irrelevant to the conversation, or just really not at the right time. And just when communication, if you take a look at how your brain operates with communication, right, the majority of it is body language. Then it's going to be facial expressions. Then it's the tone of your words. And then it's the actual words that you use. So when you are limited to only the words that you use, in an email, for example, or when you're on a call, you're limited to only the words that you use and the tone that you have. Those two things become so important. You really have to get masterful at your communication. So we've really focused on soft skills for the last year and a half.
Good.
And just making sure our people can speak very well and write very well and come across as polished and communicate exactly what it is they mean. There's so many nuances in language. What I found is a lot of them were too vague. They needed to be much more clear about either what they were asking for or what they wanted or what they were proposing. There was too much vagueness in their language. So definitely, I think in the virtual sales space, your communication becomes critically important. And of course, understanding that probably the sales cycle is going to look a little bit different. So preparing for that in advance, whether that's by, sharing materials earlier, or making sure that you really have the knowledge of, like Raul is talking about, what are their needs? Because sometimes we go into it thinking they have one need, but it's really a different one. And then I think having diversity in the touch points. So I too, like everyone else here, really miss being in person. That's definitely where I'm strongest. But leveraging, we are always utilizing phone call, email, and LinkedIn, right? Phone call, email, and LinkedIn, all three of those things, you have to have those touch points in different mediums, right? To create, from a marketing perspective, from the psychology, it's like people have to have 5 to 8 impressions of you before they really feel comfortable to engage with you. So if you hit them on all 3 mediums every time you're doing your outreach, well, that impression of you, those numbers go up. And from a psychological standpoint, they're going to be much more likely to engage with you. So I've kind of got to nerd out in my psychology and communication stuff over the last year and a half, but it's truly proven to be valuable for us.
Well, Stephanie, all great stuff. Thank you for sharing that. But one I want to keep in that I've seen be a major game changer with individual sales reps is that active listening. Men are just not wired to do it. They have to learn to listen.
Thanks for taking it graciously.
Stephanie, I do want to draw your attention to something, is that you said several times you're the only woman on the call, but we didn't go around and share our pronouns.
That's true. That's true. I should not say that.
Moving on from the disruptor. But and I got to tell you, if your teams are able to ask really good questions and shut up and listen, and they get disciplined around just being quiet and taking in information, they are preparing themselves for a great sale. And they're also separating themselves from all their competition because so many sales reps think that talking is selling, and it's not. So pitching is the worst thing in the world a salesperson can do. Shut up and listen. Right, Stephanie?
That's right.
There's not a man on this call that hasn't had a significant email until I say, you never listen to me, because we don't. Thanks. Great stuff. Joe, interested in your perspective on this.
Yeah. To your last comment, I've been married 26 years. I don't know how I've survived the gauntlet, but yeah. Anyway, I interesting you said what you said, Stephanie. I just got a guy yesterday. I was going back and forth, and then he hit me up on LinkedIn and said, I just emailed you when I was available. So I thought that was an interesting double touch point. But we're really big in on our video marketing as a follow-up, because it's all on demand, right? Especially if you have, and a lot of our customers have distributed, they use distributors, they have distributed sales forces. And so we started practicing what we preach on some of our own stuff. And what happens is, you know, depending on the age of that buyer, they're doing research. They don't want to talk to a salesperson. They're only willing to talk to you when they're about ready to purchase, right? So the problem is how do you, one, get their attention? So part of it's luck, right? You're pounding on enough people with enough touch points, and hopefully I've had 3 or 4 people in the last 2 months go, yeah, I've been looking for something like this. So I caught them at the right time. So, you know, you got your sales teams are going, well, this is a diminishing return. They get demoralized. They don't stay motivated. They can't get a new appointment, you know. Then you hear all the excuses. Right? We all hear that every day. And so I think from our standpoint, we really focus on, like I said, the subject line. And that goes kind of to Stephanie's point, really be articulate. But like I said, when we started working in their title or something in their responsibility, we've gotten an uptick in that response. And then and it's hard to do, is to try to customize that first sentence. And I tracked this yesterday. I sent, and I had no expectation of actually getting in front of this guy, but I went after the CEO of SAP in Germany. What the hell? I'm bored. It's 8 o'clock at night. Health, and I'm giving it a shot. And I said something specific on how I could help them in the subject line. I don't remember the exact words, but I started with, I thought I'd go right to the big guy. That was and sure as shit, he came and checked my website out, went to a few pages because it was right from his town. I tracked visitors in real time. So I was like, holy shit, it actually worked. You know, so, you know, it's that take a risk. I guess my point is customize it, but do not be afraid to let your personality come through. It doesn't always have to be perfect. I mean, perfect, yes, once you start talking about your product and your messaging, but in that opening sentence, take a risk. Let your own person, and you know what? It's surprising. I've had a few great appointments out of it, but it's because I took a shot. I made them laugh, or it was so unorthodox that it took them back. You know, it was like, I don't know what it was exactly, but that's what I've been finding. You have to put yourself out there a little bit. Everybody, if I read another LinkedIn profile that says, we provide value, blah, 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 you're snoozing, you know, you're like, I'm done. Like it doesn't do anything for you. So that's been working for us. The follow-up videos on demand and or in advance through our platform selfishly, but I track it. I know what products they looked at. I know if they downloaded the collateral. I love it when I call somebody, oh yeah, that was great. I'm like, no, you didn't look. You didn't look at the damn thing. You know? At least I have that. Or they did look at this product. Okay, great. I know where to kind of tailor my, open question. Oh, what did you think of that product? Oh, that's pretty interesting. You know, so getting some of those analytics with the on-demand video, going back to that millennial buyer who wants to literally do his homework before he has to talk. Video helps. The video stats are undeniable in terms of the consumption with all the third-party research that's out there. Go to whyemployeesdon'tdowhatI. They have stats galore on video, and it's just they want to do it on their own time, and not everybody can make a Zoom meeting, right? So working in the video on demand in some capacity. YouTube, I watched a video today from a guy in Europe. He sent me on YouTube, and right at the end of it, it was a killer video about they sell tech. Brian, they actually sell tech companies in Europe. It's really good. They got 200 customers. But at the end of it, like YouTube, was a hot dog video. So and you took away from this great testimonial video and he jumped right over to your hot dog video on YouTube. So it's a little, you don't get any analytics, right? But it's better than not having it at all.
Yeah.
So use video at a bare bones minimum because that's how they're consuming information. They don't want to read, and be very succinct with that message. It doesn't have to be lights, camera, action, or expensive, and putting, video in your subject line. Hey, great video. They'll watch it. We get a little more open rates when we use video versus not. So
yeah, huge stats around that.
Yeah, that's what we're doing.
Yeah. Fantastic, Joe. Thank you for all that. And Brian, we're coming up at the top of the hour. I'm shortcutting you a little bit, but again, we'll stay on as long as anybody wants to stay on. So share with us some of your experiences and what you're utilizing in the way of virtual selling.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think one of the things, one is especially with the COVID pandemic, everybody, the expectation of every customer is everyone's remote, right? So our biggest deals that we've done to date actually were done post-COVID opposed to pre-COVID, right? Mm-hmm. Dollar value wise and deal size wise, because if one customer wants to meet in person, then the equation breaks. Right? Because everybody has the same expectation, then it works pretty well, right? But I think what's happening is that I think a lot of times, I tell a lot of my folks and my team is that, sales is basically also it's a very stressful business, but it's also a make feel good business. What I mean by that is, if you don't make your customer feel achieved and feel good after the call, you kind of lost because people carry memories for a very long time, right? So sometimes, when you look at your pipeline, the stress of the pipeline, you don't want to actually transfer that to the customers. You want to be super careful, right? So that's one of the things. I love the Rawls point and, Mike's point on being super prepared. Like Stephanie was saying, the thing, be very buttoned up, listen a lot. I think there's a lot of value in listening a lot, because listening to the customer also allows you to understand what the use cases are. Right? Because at the end of the day, the selling is all done by storytelling. Storytelling is all centered around use cases, right? Not so much your product. Use cases are basically the business problems that they have, right? And then, because once you are, so I think what happens is I like the fact of, we typically I like the like Rawl, we start with like what the agenda today or like what we are trying to accomplish today. Because if not, some of the meetings can just go wild and never, right? Because in enterprise sales, you have to do like 3-4 meetings before you even getting to a point, right? So that's one. So you set the expectation very clearly. But at the same time, also listen a lot and understand the use cases, because once you know that they have certain use case problems, allow the customers to talk about their problems, right? The more they talk about their problems and the use cases, it becomes very clear. Because what happens sometimes is, because we are a low-code platform with AI, machine learning, and all, you can solve that to any. It's very generic, so you can use that to solve a lot of different problems, right? All the way from HR to medical. So the more use cases we learn, the more opportunities for us to do post-sales and land and expand and all that stuff, right? That allows us to kind of understand the use cases better. The other is we also create a thought leadership type capability. What I mean is I run a podcast with an ex-Gartner analyst called This Week in Innovation. We have about 4,000 or 5,000 leaders listening to it. We are right now the top 5 in retail podcasts, right? The reason we do that is, even though it's not a selling opportunity, but we create thought leadership, right? Then everybody, because you wanted to create that trusted relationship with customers and people around you. It takes time. It's not a simple one, because you got to spend an hour every week talking about something and inviting guests, whatever, right? But it's a very effective tool I've seen, because a lot of leaders want to listen to what you have to say. And there are times where we are pulled into opportunities where we have nothing to do with, and they want our expert opinion, right? That helps a little bit. So kind of we have to sort of balance that between an actual active funnel. But if you can do that effectively, I think it'll be pretty helpful as well, because I think you want all your customers to sort of look at you like a thought leader and somebody who can help them through solving their problem.
Well said. Well said. And look at you. It's like you timed it perfectly.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, did you see that?
Yeah, timing was good.
Well,
maybe I followed the 3:30 rule. Sorry.
3:30 rule, baby. There you go. And again, we'll stay on as long as anybody wants to stay on. But we've had a lot of information shared. We've got a deep pool of knowledge that I believe has been built from this discussion today, and thank you all for that. Does anybody have any questions or looking for any solutions that you feel like somebody on this call might be able to help you with? So I'm just going to go around the room. Joe, are you got anything you'd like some information on?
No, not really. I mean, I'll just digest. There were some great suggestions.
Excellent.
Great suggestions. All the way around. Very, very, very helpful. So thank everybody. Thank you all for that.
Thank you for participating. How about you, Roel?
No, I walked into this eyes wide open, ears open. I had no expectations other than to listen and learn and share. So,
I probably exceeded that expectation today.
Definitely.
You expected nothing, and
yeah,
accomplished.
Okay. You know, I do that. If I woke up, I achieved what I was looking to do for the day. Right, I woke up, but I noticed you recorded it. So maybe it's available later to kind of go back. I think there were some really good tips.
We
I
send it back out afterwards. We do.
Great.
We send it to you guys.
No, appreciate everyone's engagement. It was really good.
Yeah. I've done a bunch of these. This was by far one of the best groups I've been able to participate with.
Oh.
And I'll send you all the videos. I haven't sent that to anybody else, but the really short group today. So we're very fortunate with that. Brian, any last words before we get off?
No, I think it's super valuable. I took actually a lot of notes. I had to transfer this into online, but it was easier to just write on whatever piece of paper I had. But definitely a lot of great learning. At some point, I would like to learn from you in terms of how long does your sales cycle takes, and all the standard enterprise selling process, because we're trying to put together a traditional good old school selling, because so we're trying. So yeah, love to pick your brains up offline. Yeah.
Okay, love that. Well, I'll bid adieu. Michael Burkett, stay on for just a couple minutes with me. But everybody else have a great day, great afternoon, and a wonderful weekend. And thank you again so much for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for this. Fun. Appreciate it. Bye, guys.